work your way up, or like go out in nature, do a walk. I often recommend this. Go for a nature walk. Don't bring your phone.
Mm,
No technology.
love it.
Listen to the trees, listen to the earth, and see what comes forth.
Yeah.
But it's like little subtle ways to start to get safe in your own mind.
Mhm.
That's kind of what I say.
Welcome to Real Women, Real Results, the podcast where we go beyond the reps and dive into what it really takes to live a stronger, healthier, and more confident life. I'm your host, Jamie Revelle, women's fitness expert and founder of W3 Body Women's Training Gyms in Chicagoland. Each week, we'll bring you real stories, expert insights, and the tools you need to create real results. Let's get into it. Welcome back to Real Women, Real Results. At W3 Body, we're always talking about how fitness is about so much more than just lifting weights or doing cardio. It's also about our mindset, our energy, or even the subconscious beliefs that shape how we show up for ourselves. Today, I have a special guest who brings a totally unique perspective to wellness. She works with sound and vibrational healing, breathwork, meditation, and even subconscious reprogramming. We're going to dive into how these practices can impact your fitness journey, your health, and your life. So welcome to our guest, Shanae. She is actually a friend of a friend, and I feel so honored and blessed to have been introduced to you. So thank you so much for being here with us.
Yay. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, us too. Awesome. So we're going to dive right into just all of the healing work and different things that you do. And along the way, we'll learn all together. So can you start by sharing a little about your background and what led you into this work of energy healing and breath work?
Yeah, totally. I think for me, my path, I was always kind of down a more traditional path originally. I'm from the Silicon Valley, so I kind of knew I was going to be in tech and in the corporate world. But in a certain point when I was on that trajectory, I was really stressed and my nervous system was not great. My anxiety levels were so high. This is actually when I was in tech sales in New York City. And so I was at the peak of my stress level. I was selling into financial services. And I just noticed that there was like so much of my wellness that I hadn't really realized it was more than just fitness. It was more than just working out. Cause I even think about in New York City, I used to be such a runner, but I couldn't do as many of the types of runs that would give me the access to nature as I could in California. So then I started to realize like nature was such a big component of it. Anyways, long story short, I feel like yoga and meditation through yoga and that kind of like movement meditation became like my way of connecting deeper inward when I didn't have access to like running trails and going outside in nature. But after that experience in New York City, I feel like there was a big part of me that was like, okay, I need a reset. I'm moving to Australia. I moved to Sydney, Australia, and that's where I met our mutual friend, Jenna. And when I was there, I feel like there was all of a sudden this break from the rat race of the United States and especially New York City. I was kind of getting a break. I was back in nature. I was in a different culture than the American dream kind of hustle culture. And all of a sudden, I started connecting to deeper practices. And so it was actually, I was living in Australia at the time, but I had a trip to Bali. And I always joke, it's like a classic girl goes to Bali and has like some kind of spiritual meditative experience.
Right.
But that was my stereotypical experience. I went to Bali and I experienced my first sound healing and I was blown away. I was like, wow, this is the first time there isn't a thought in my mind. There isn't an overthinking. There isn't this anxiety. There's not this worry. I'm just completely at peace. I was like, am I dreaming? Am I awake? I was in this deep, deep meditative state. It was I can't even fully describe what it felt like, but people who have had really deep meditations, I'm sure they can kind of resonate with what I'm saying. It's like those ineffable experiences. But after that, I was like, okay, there's something to this. And then I had my first breathwork experience it was like a mind, body, spirit festival thing. And this guy was doing Wim Hof breathwork, actually. And I don't know if people know much about Wim Hof, but he's also known as the Iceman, but he basically uses breathing techniques to withstand very, very cold temperatures. And he hiked to Mount Everest in a pair of shorts and stuff because
Wow.
he was able to like kind of be able to withstand, and like he does a lot of the cold plunging stuff. So I feel like he was kind of a big first voice and name for the ice baths, cold plunging, because when you use breathing techniques, it changes your circulatory system, changes your nervous system and your ability to withstand cold temperatures. So anyways, my aspect of breath work, I also found that it helped enter like new states of consciousness and new expanded states of consciousness. So then breath work, sound healing, and meditation became something that I did with my practice solely. So it became, I kind of created something called the Soli experience, which was meditation, breath work, and sound healing. And Soli is the name of one of my practices, but Soli is kind of like my mindfulness space of my practices, but it's derived from the Korean word for sound. So it's all about like sound vibration and vibrational healing. And from there, even more came about like a trip to Japan led to Reiki training. So that's more energy work. So I
Hmm.
feel like it just started to unfold in all these different areas and then some plant medicine guide work and all this stuff. So a lot of different elements. And then eventually a master's program that I was in that was about like consciousness, and it was a master's in integral noetic science with a concentration on psychedelics and anomalous studies. So it was kind of focused on there's so many words when I say
Yeah.
that. Everyone's
It
just like,
sounds
what?
very
What is
intricate.
that? Yeah. Yeah. But it's kind of like consciousness and like the science of knowing. And then I joke that my school, it's such a unique school. It was like Hogwarts. So everyone there had very interesting, intuitive gifts. So it was a fun experience. But yeah, that's a very long winded description of kind of like what brought me into what I'm doing now. And then eventually, which I know we'll talk about in
Mhm.
potentially another episode, but some of the work that I'm doing converging artificial intelligence and consciousness.
Yeah, which is awesome. And so, well, I say think futuristic, but in reality it's not. It's like so here, like ever changing and so quickly, but everyone needs to pay
Yeah.
attention. So that's awesome that you're integrating all these different aspects of your life. Like how cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Came to mind when you were talking about all of that was just like the thought of starting a meditation practice, whether it's like just once, let me try this, or like, okay, I really want to integrate
Yeah.
and incorporate meditation in my life. Like, what was that experience like for you starting out, coming from like this really huge hustle type of life and industry, and
Yeah.
then being like, I want a quieter mind, like what was that like the first one?
Yeah. Gosh. Well, I mean, I think first of all, being in a location like Sydney that was like a 5-minute walk from the beach and really connected to nature and the work life balance, I was still working a corporate job, but the work life balance gave me the space to actually think about, okay, what kinds of practices would I even want to start? And then from there, it was just a process of trial and error and discovery. I was like, oh, okay, transcendental meditation. Let's try that. Okay, sound healing, breath work, energy work. I was trying out so many different practices because I was almost figuring out through myself which ones were most effective, at least for me. And, everyone has their own, everyone's different. And so some practices might work better for me versus another person. But the ones that really worked for me were these ones. So it was really a process of trial and error. And there's so much availability in Bondi Beach where I was living. There was like so many different types of modalities that you could use to bring yourself inner peace, clarity, altered, expanded states of consciousness, as well as just the simple fact of like always listening to the ocean waves. So being in this like little small community that's right next to the ocean, that was another aspect that I was like, that's the consistent sound healing and vibrational healing that a lot of people are missing by not being as close to a place that's just hearing the sounds of nature. Because that
Mhm.
vibrational sound, the rhythmic waves, that's a sound healing that's free. That's given to
Yeah.
us by the earth.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know a lot of women listening might think of fitness as just the physical side, but,
Yes.
reps and sets and how many calories did I burn? How long did I work out and things like that. But you talk
Mm-hmm.
about fitness as being internal as well. So can you explain what you mean by
Mm-hmm.
that?
Yeah. And I can just speak to my own journey as well as some work that I've done with clients too. But I almost feel like there's a deeper aspect that is this like your body holds so much wisdom and it holds memory as well. So, for example, if there is a part of you that's feeling unsafe. And a lot of times that's anxiety, right? Like you're unsure of what the future holds, or there's this uncertainty. And, stress is often said to contribute. Words are hard today. Stress Stress often can contribute to, holding on to weight and stuff. But for me, as I've done deeper practices and through my own journey, I think there's a big aspect that's like when you don't feel safe in whatever is coming up in your life, when you're having anxiety, uncertainty about what the future holds, there's almost this protective layer that you're building on yourself. And I almost feel like that goes back to like the days before we were able to make food so easily and so quickly. Like if we weren't sure where our next meal could come from, you're holding on to more to make sure that you're not, withering away. So it's almost this understanding of like when we're stressed and when we're feeling unsafe and when there's something that maybe we haven't processed deep within us, then our body is going to hold on to that weight until we dive deeper into our psyche and understand and do that self-healing work. So I almost feel like there's like multiple layers to it. Like there's the inner work and that inner subconscious work of like what are we holding on to? What doesn't feel safe in our body that we're almost like literally storing. And then when releasing that, then comes the journey of like the outward movement, which are like going to your gyms, working with practitioners that understand the female body and that physical aspect of fitness. And it's twofold. Like there's two different steps and two different layers to it. And yeah, I can speak for me. In the times in my life where I was feeling anxiety about what the future held, or I was processing like relational difficulty of fear of the unknown, or even like friendship breakups, friendship situations where I was losing trust with someone, the way my body held on to weight. And until I processed and had healed some of those emotions and almost became like the friend to myself, then I was able to kind of like release and like move forward. And then there's also aspects of vibrational healing and like just calming your nervous system with meditation, breathwork, sound, and really getting into that peaceful state. So you're not in this like cortisol inducing fight or flight mode, and you could just relax and your body could come back to homeostasis and get back to the way that it wants to feel and the way it wants to be.
hmm Wow. So, yeah, you kind of answered my next questions actually already, but just to
Yeah.
like kind of reiterate, it's, if someone feels like they're doing all the right things, but their body's holding on to weight, or they feel like they're working out and they're doing all the things, but it's just not getting them the results that they'd like, you feel like a part of that could be that they're holding on to some type of trauma, or there's something in the subconscious that
Yeah.
needs to be brought up and out in order to just like let it go and move forward.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
and I think in order to have like a fully integrated perspective, so that's like mind, body, spirit, soul, all of these different layers, like to really understand that like it's working through each layer because it's not just one, you can be doing all the right things. And I've had times in my life where I have been doing all the right things, but I'm just like, why don't I feel the way I did when I was at this point? Oh, because I was actually I was feeling happy. I was feeling safe. A lot of different categories in my life were feeling like they were in harmony with one another. And so it's really just figuring out that balance of never or try not to lean so far into one direction, but knowing that we are whole in so many different categories. And so not forgetting about those too.
Yeah, love that. Absolutely. So, can you walk us through what sound healing or vibrational healing looks like for someone new to it, and what does it actually feel like in practice?
Yeah, and I can use just the example that would be really relatable to people because most people have listened to music or gone to a concert of some sort. So it's almost the understanding of, or you can even think about like the way music affects you in a movie, right? Like there's certain sounds that will affect you in different ways. So let's talk about concerts. So think about like how you'll feel at a rock concert with that kind of vibrational frequency flowing into your ear through your body versus an R&B singer versus a pop singer, and then think about like classical music. If you ever have listened to classical music, like the way your body feels. So now you can think about it from the example of if you have certain instruments that are specifically tuned to help you get into a peaceful, relaxed, and meditative state, And that is vibrating at frequencies that really put your body in like homeostasis and harmony. That's essentially what these vibrational frequencies are doing. And the different sounds, I mean, I have a whole wide range of instruments, but they're very meditative. They can also align to like different parts of the body. So I don't know if people are familiar with the chakra system, but it could also just be as simple as like, certain instruments that are helpful for clearing your head and like helping you really get out of that anxious mind. And those are some like the sound bowls that I do. Whereas, there's certain instruments that could be really nice for, feeling grounded, like feeling really peaceful. So, sometimes you can feel like up into like another like deep meditative state where you kind of feel like you're floating. Sometimes there's instruments that kind of get you into that grounded state. So I have like sometimes these instruments that are like drums that I'll play that kind of get you like deep into that earth grounded state. Whereas like some of these higher pitch frequencies, like sound bowls, they feel like they're just vibrating through your body. It's almost like there's this wave of vibration going through your body, but it's just happening with sound. So it's almost like a energetic body massage, but with sound.
Hmm. Wow. And the
Yeah.
idea there ultimately is to like relax and like kind of the same benefits as meditation ultimately.
Yeah, yeah, essentially. It's like sound meditation.
Hmm.
So it can also bring up like altered states of consciousness. It can kind of allow people to also like reframe their patterns of thinking. So like when I explain that, I think about the movie example. I'll go back to the movie example from this. Like if you have like a scene playing and you play like a certain like soft sounding track behind it versus like a really intense track. Like you think about a scary movie, you put it on mute and you watch it and you're like laughing. It's
Hmm.
like this isn't scary. Whereas if you have like the right track associated with it, it's going to give you a different feeling. So it's kind of this understanding of like the way music and sound can evoke feeling and different types of sensations. So it can also bring new patterns of thinking. So if you're having a really stressful experience with somebody in your life or a situation that happened that was unexpected, all of a sudden, when you're thinking about it while you're in this sound meditation, it's rewiring the way you're thinking about it. And you
Hmm.
might approach it with more love or kindness or compassion. So those are some of the little ways, but also on a physical level, I've had people come out of experiences where like they have back problems or like a certain pain in their back. And then after the sound experience or like the breathwork and sound experience, all of a sudden they're feeling like a certain release. So it's kind of that vibrational, energetic massage. And it's one of these things that's like somewhat ineffable and hard to fully describe unless you've experienced it. But I try to explain it in the ways of like concerts or movies as like a way to make it super applicable for
Yeah.
people. But you could also even try it on a small format, like, sound healing frequencies on Spotify or
Mm.
Apple Music, and then just like get some familiarity with it, like close your eyes and just feel into it. And then you can start to get a sense of what it kind of does. Or book a session with me.
Right. Also that, yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I understand now like the concept and the idea because I've always heard it, but I've never
Yeah.
understood. I guess I've never looked into it or asked enough questions to like understand from like how it works during the process. But
Yeah.
yeah, I cool. I love
Yeah.
it. And
Yeah.
what about breath work? Why is that such a powerful tool for healing and stress release?
It is basically changing the composition of carbon dioxide and oxygen throughout your body. You're taking in like deeper inhales. So it's kind of like the way that I facilitate it. You're taking full, deep inhales and light, gentle exhales. So you're changing the composition in your body. And all of a sudden, with that breathing pattern, it accesses different states of consciousness. So this is kind of what I was saying about Wim Hof, where you're able to kind of have different physiological sensations where you can withstand really cold temperatures. I'm not a science pro. I won't be the one that's able to tell you all the scientific components of what actually is happening in the body, but I will say that it's something that when you're breathing this way, it's allowing you to process information in a new way without needing to experience something like plant medicine or something. It's creating a new pathway for you that's essentially like, for example, how you move throughout your day you can often indicate like your stress levels based on the way you're breathing. You know, if you're really stressed, you're probably breathing really short. You know,
Mm.
it's like short little breaths. Whereas when you are feeling more deep and relaxed and maybe in a meditative state, your breath might be like more spaced out, might be a little bit deeper. Like you're actually able to take in more when you're breathing, when you're out in nature, you're like really taking in the oxygen from the earth, from the environment. So it's allowing you to take in those full oxygenated inhales. You're taking like those full breaths in. And we rarely give ourselves the ability to do that in our day to day because we're just moving fast paced. We're not even paying attention to the fact that we're breathing.
Yeah.
Like it's just this natural thing that we're doing. So then the act of consciously breathing, it's like this is the thing that's actually keeping us alive. Like this is like the motion that's
Yeah.
keeping us alive. And so that intentional practice and that energetic association with it as like we are giving ourselves the opportunity for that full lung capacity inhale, it just completely rewires the way that you're thinking. It's similar to what I was saying with like sound healing as well, but it's operating on a different level with the breath, more physiological. But you are able to process information in a new lens. Also, you can withstand holding your breath for lengthy periods of time. So, a lot of times, not only with like cold plunging, but also with free diving. So, a lot of free divers will use breathwork techniques so that they can go free diving for like 5 minutes at a time. So they'll use like these really deep inhales and gentle exhales, and it will just like create this. It's almost like a controlled hyperventilation, which might scare people and sound a bit out there, but it's a bit of this controlled hyperventilation action that all of a sudden allows you to withstand more time without oxygen because you're almost over oxygenating your body.
Hmm. Wow. What comes to mind is, well, first of all, just given the amount of oxygen that we would be taking in more through doing this type of work, how beneficial that is for your body in terms of recovery. And then also,
100%.
and I've learned this recently from my Aura ring. So I love all the data that it gives me on a daily basis. And it's like, you recovered very poorly last night, so you should not do anything intense today. So,
Yeah.
but like I take it to heart, and then I'm like, why didn't I recover well overnight? You know, and it's because my resting heart rate, it didn't drop to where it needed to for whatever the reason might be.
Yeah.
But I imagine that doing, really great breath work that would help with that. It would get you to where you need to be, at least for that period of time where, and I
Hmm.
imagine part of it would become habitual to where you just ultimately will recover way better.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So,
mean, and I love you taking that lens with it. It makes so much sense with what you do.
yeah.
100%. Yeah. Like, cause your muscles need oxygen, like your blood, your body, you need oxygen. And so if you're not taking those full breaths or if you're not giving yourself that capacity to do so,
Hmm.
then, you might not see the results you want.
Yeah. And I think people are shocked when they do learn to breathe correctly. Cause I've heard it with my
Hmm.
members and they'll
Hmm.
be like, none of us breathe right. And I'm like, well, then teach us how to do it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely, I'm very curious. Do you feel like it takes a lot of sessions to make it more habitual, or it's like, it's not necessarily a habitual thing, but it's a mindful thing that you have to like tune into your body and breathe a
Yeah.
little deeper?
I mean, I could say it might be both,
Hmm.
right? Like there's some people that really like the routine of doing breath work every single morning or every single day or, maybe multiple times a day. There's some people that like to do it intermittently, like a one-off session once a week or something. And that's like their big expanded consciousness experience. And then for some people, it's like this is actually also a way, as soon as you have like your first breathwork experience, as soon as you start to understand and rewire your brain into like paying attention to your breath, then it might be just your general day to day. All of a sudden, you're like breathing deeper, you're breathing more intentionally, you're being more mindful of the fact that you want to take in more oxygen because what are the experiences that you've had? Like you might have had this amazing breathwork experience, and then now you're being more intentional about the breath and about the way that you work with it. So it kind of just depends on the person.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Have you had a client, or do you have an example of a story where someone experienced like a pretty big breakthrough by combining this type of work with, well, everyday life or like their fitness or health journey in particular?
This is where I'll get into it. it's almost like the mix of some of my main work now is working with the subconscious mind, but I was accessing that through breath work as well. So I figured out a way to also do it in like a meditative, it's almost like hypnosis, but it's almost like a meditative hypnosis capacity. But I realized I was already doing that. It's almost like breath work was the training for me for starting to help understand how to work with the subconscious, because the breathing style already got people into their subconscious mind. And then from there, it was like, oh, these are other ways that we can tap into people's subconscious mind, maybe with not as much, maybe we don't have to do like the full breathing because that's not as accessible for people in like every single day-to-day environment unless they're really being intentional about it. But the two combined both are able to do this, but I do have examples of, like, for example, someone I recently worked with, I was working with on subconscious, I call them quantum calibration sessions, but they're basically subconscious reprogramming sessions. So working deep with the subconscious to understand, and to be fair, we didn't really know that it was going to be around like weight or body image or certain trauma that was being held. But that did end up being predominantly what it was about. It was almost targeting what deeply this person, she was feeling, that was causing her to hold on to this protective layer, and what trauma was stored that needed to be released. So it was almost this understanding of how we could work with that version of herself. So it's almost like there is a version of you when you're feeling this fear or this need for protection that's almost stored from a younger age. So for her, it was, 9 years old when there was a certain scenario happen. And I won't go into detail
Yeah.
around what happened, but, becoming the older parent or the mentor or the friend that this version of you would have needed to feel safe, protected, and loved so that you could heal from that experience and then kind of come back into your physical form and not have that same kind of association with needing that protection. An easy way to explain it would be, have you seen Inside Out?
No.
The Pixar movie with all the little characters?
Yeah. No, I know which one you're talking about, but I haven't seen it.
Oh, okay. Well, basically in the movie, like there's all these different like emotion characters. There's like fear and there's anger and there's joy. And they all like take turns like taking over this young girl's brain. And it's almost like the way like there's different versions of ourselves that come out at various times. So from that perspective, that's kind of what I use to like help people understand like how we're working. It's called internal family systems. That's kind of like the therapeutic name for it, for this way of working. But you're basically going back and healing the younger versions of yourselves by coming back as your older version of self. So I do that on a visual level. And I've done that in breathwork sessions as well. But basically, you can almost access this state where it's almost like a dream world where we're working with the mind in a dream capacity, where all of a sudden you can have the visual, like imagine yourself as this 9-year-old version, and imagine your older self on this, at this, however old you currently are, going back to nurture that self. What would you tell her? How would you support her? How would you make her feel safe? How would you make her feel held? And then by having that experience, you're healing the version of you in this form that's feeling unsafe or holding on to protection. And then it becomes like that's how you kind of integrate these parts of you. So you're not still feeling like, because sometimes when we have these reactions, they're actually like younger versions of us. It's like I'm having a 9-year-old reaction in my 30-year-old body or however old you are, but it's actually just this version of you that's just hasn't received the love that it needs in order to feel integrated and safe and whole so you can move on to the version of you that you want to be.
Wow. I love that. It's beautiful. And
Yeah,
it's
thanks.
so cool that you have like, yeah, that's what you do, for your work. And like, I
Yeah, it's
imagine so
fun.
rewarding.
Yeah, it is. It is definitely.
For someone listening to, this podcast and that story in particular, if they're curious, but maybe nervous about trying any of these practices, what's a simple way to start?
for sound healing, that's where I was like, you could go on YouTube and look up like a sound bowl healing. Like maybe start with the crystal bowls because those ones are very easily can get you
Mhm.
out of your mind
Yeah,
into your body. It's just like I'm not even trying, and all of a sudden I'm not thinking about anything, and it's amazing.
that's awesome.
So there's sound healing frequencies. There's if you go on Spotify, there's so many like frequency playlists, like 432 hertz or what is it, 528 hertz, little ones like that. But then also for people starting out, I mean, for breath work, I feel like there's various classes that get popped up locally. I'm going to start to do a little bit more virtual stuff as well. So if people ever wanted to book like a little one-off group class, I'll start doing those too. But I would say if somebody's feeling nervous or unsure about it, it's start with some of those YouTube videos and get familiar with it. But then also it could be as simple as starting to get familiar with sitting in stillness. Because I see that sounds so simple, but I feel like in our busy day-to-day lives, it's something that it takes more intentional effort than most people realize. So, like setting a timer for 5 minutes and just breathe with your eyes closed for 5 minutes and pay attention to your breath
Hmm.
and start there
Yeah.
and then work your way up. Or like go out in nature, do a walk. I often recommend this. Go for a nature walk. Don't bring your phone.
Mm.
No technology.
Love it.
Listen to the trees, listen to the earth, and see what comes forth.
Yeah.
But it's like little subtle ways to start to get safe in your own mind.
Mhm.
That's kind of what I say.
I love that. I imagine, again, thinking for myself and just some members that I know as well, for better sleep quality, doing the same thing right before you go to bed, just being really
Yeah.
intentional about it. Turn your phone off. Even if it's not like a guided meditation type of like very
Yeah.
intense practice, start small. I have 5 minutes before I go to bed where I could absolutely do that. So it's just doing
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, what's the smallest thing? Okay, five
Yeah.
minutes, just no tech, no nothing, and just pay attention to your breathing.
Hmm.
Like just start with like what does it feel like to be in your body with your breath?
Hmm.
Then like start that simply. So yeah.
Yeah. I'm inspired. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
I was going to ask you, and maybe this answer differs or maybe it's the same, but any short breath work or grounding technique that our listeners could use before or after a workout?
Sometimes I do. I feel like box breathing would probably be the most simple one. So box breathing is basically doing it's box breathing because it's equal counts. Breathing in, holding, exhaling, breathing in. So think of like 4 counts.
Mm,
So breathe in for 4. So, and then hold 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold. So it's like that box.
I like it.
So that would be a really easy, good one to do after a workout. Um, as for breath work, like I don't know if I would say do breath work, like the active style of breath work right before a workout, but maybe when you wake up, it's kind of like that little burst, like that coffee burst. But this is where I mean the breathing technique that I use with my sessions, it's kind of like it's almost like an 80% breath into the belly, 20% into the chest, and then a soft, like let's say 60% release. So you kind of repeat it like, and if you want to do that as kind of like a way to wake up, that could be a really good one to do 30 counts and then hold, like pause and hold at the top and the bottom, because that's where you can see like the length of your breath hold extend. So if you do 30 counts of those kind of in that rapid pace, and then hold at the top or the bottom, and then you could do 30 counts again and 30 counts again. 3 rounds of 30. I've done that, and that's like a nice, like we'll call it like a little morning cup of coffee,
Sure.
little energizer boost.
Love it.
And then another one could be the what is it? The 4-7-8. So it's like the 4 count inhale. So breathing in for 4 counts. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 7. And then exhale for 8. So it's kind of like a longer exhale out. So it's like really accessing, that like peaceful parasympathetic state. So yeah,
I love it.
I feel like it's kind of like when you're breathing in more, that's going to get you more active. When you're exhaling more, that's going to get you more deep. So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of the 4-7-8 would be a good one to kind of like settle in a little bit more. Box is like that overall, if you think about like the overall balance, that active like 80%, 20%, 60% on a rhythmic like 30-30-30. That's more like little booster, cup of coffee.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, those are some different breathing practices.
Very cool. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try the box breathing in one of my sessions at the end. Is it okay to do at the end, do you think?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Let me know how it
Yes,
goes.
I will. Like just to like we all stretch together, so let's just take
Of
another
course.
minute and try this breathing technique, and then I'll share the benefits with
Yes.
them and they could have a little takeaway. And then I'll tell them to watch this
I love
podcast.
it. Yes. I love this so much. And
Perfect.
I feel like they'll probably be surprised at just like 1 minute
Yep.
of something like this, how it feels.
Mhm. Awesome. Well, where can our listeners learn more about you or try one of your sessions? I know you're located in California, so what virtual options
Mhm.
do they have to contact you?
Yeah, yeah. So right now, I'm just kind of doing like a full reconstruction of offerings. I have certain offerings that are coming out at the end of the month, and then I plan to do a couple different virtual offerings monthly as well. So I think that would be a really great option for your audience. But my website is thesoli.com. So THESOLII.com. And that's if you want to book like more formal sessions with me or you're interested in some of the programs or offerings that I have. But then Instagram is a really great way to get those like kind of pop up virtual ones. So I now have 3 Instagrams, but Shanae Bunzel, I have my Soli one. So that's for like mindfulness practices and retreats. And then I have Orion, which is the AI one,
Mm,
which I'll get into at another time.
definitely. Cool. Okay. And last question that I ask everyone, what does being a strong woman mean to you in this stage of your life?
Ooh, I feel like it's really honoring the feminine qualities within myself while still operating in a very, especially while being like a tech founder now, but while operating in a very male dominant role. So still honoring like creativity, intuition, collaboration, love, generosity, while still operating in that world that would look at that and think of it as maybe not as successful
Mm,
or not as useful in those businesses. I feel like for me, like that's probably my biggest phase of honoring being a strong woman. It's by honoring feminine qualities while working within a system that is not necessarily conducive to those
yeah.
qualities. So
Th-
that's what it feels like for me right now.
that's awesome. The fight to stay true to self.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hear you.
Yeah.
The fitness industry is very male dominated. So we're out here pushing women forward. So I understand.
Yes. Yes. I love it.
Yes. Well, ladies, remember building strength isn't just about muscles. Sometimes the breakthrough we need comes from within. Pairing your workouts with tools like meditation or breath work can be the missing link. So if you are curious, please check out Shanae and all the work that she's doing again on her website and her Instagram. We will link those in the show notes and give her a shout. Shanae, thank you so much for being here and sharing your gifts with us. If you are listening and felt something click during this conversation, take a moment this week to breathe, to pause, or to try a short meditation. And as always, keep showing up for yourself in and out of the gym. Until next time, this is Jamie with Real Women, Real Results. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in to Real Women, Real Results. If you loved this episode, be sure to follow the podcast and leave a review. It helps more women find these powerful stories. If you're local and want to join our gym, check out our 4-week trial. Head to train@w3body.com for more info. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram, w3body_Berwyn and w3body_Elmhurst for more strength, support, and community. See you next time.